Hey, Steve and Pam, thanks for having me over to the house a couple days ago. Just wanted to walk you through the analysis, let me know what you think, and we'll start getting some paperwork signed and get ready to get that estate sale so we can get moving. Thanks, guys. Okay, Steve and Pam, just this is the tax record of your mother's house. You can see what it appraised for. Tax appraisals are not very useful. We're not going to worry about that too much. You can see when she purchased it, etc. One thing that's important here is this is the square footage that I'm basing this analysis on. So anytime I come up with a price per square foot, I'm not necessarily going to show you all the math, but I've already done all the math. So we're working with that right now. What I'm going to do is a different method of measuring. If that method yields a higher price, square footage, we'll change that, but that won't change the analysis very much. It'll just change the multiplier. It may go up as, $2 grand, $3 grand, something like that. But I believe that looking at the other floor plans in Stafford Estates, I'm pretty confident that the tax record is correct. That same floor plan would have been much smaller without the garage finished out. So it would have been in the 1,300 range, which is almost exactly what a closed-in garage we usually do, is add about 200 square feet, a little more. So we're going to take several approaches here. The first one is the one that they teach us, in real estate school, and the most effective one, but I've used some other methods as well. So first thing I'm going to do is, this is going 1 year back. Now, an appraiser will not take comps that are a year back. However, I like to establish a trend so that if I have a statistic in there that is a little too low or a little too high that's very recent, and that seems to be an outlier, it doesn't mess up my analysis by overpricing or underpricing a house, which is probably exactly what happened across the street there. So as I hover over these numbers, you're going to see the square footage. The price per square foot. Right here, this is 3103 Stafford. That one sold for 112 a square foot. We're at 110 a square foot. Then we go to 105, another 105, then down to 97 and 94 and 91. So I've ordered those. Now, the important part is, as you look at these houses, you have to place your house in the midst of these. So this is our highest comparable. Of course, this would be wonderful. It doesn't have the basement, which would, again, would be a perfect comparable. But if I were to use this comparable, I take that back. This one doesn't have a basement. I apologize. If I take this one, I'm going to have to make adjustments for the basement and for the finishes, the fact that the kitchen and the stainless appliances and all that. That gets pretty complicated. And it's not that I mind doing it, but from a consumer perspective, it doesn't really matter. If they wanted their house to look like this, that's fine in this old neighborhood. However, we're going to have to back up the cost of the actual repairs or upgrades out of the sales price, and that's actually going to hurt us more, because the ROI on doing these kind of repairs in a neighborhood that has such high demand as Stafford Estates isn't very good. You're not getting a good return on your investment. So we're better off looking at more comparable homes and getting our price per square foot from that. So I'm showing you the high end. Now let's look at the other one that was at 110. Okay, again, with the basement, this is one I sold. This one had a great view, had wonderful decorations. We did have some odds and ends that came up on the home inspection that we had to address. Once all those were ironed out, it sold for a fair price, right around 110 a square foot. However, it did have the basement. So we'll get back to that in just a second, and how the basement plays into all this. This is, again, Stafford across the street. Now we get into a house that is par or subpar. Well, they don't have interior photos. Oh, here we go. I got a few. To your house. I would consider this subpar. This also had a lateral crack in the foundation. You see the kitchen needs to be upgraded. So that gives us a really good hope that if we go back to our listings and we look at 311 Stafford, again, directly across the street from you, it has a good price per square foot, even though it still needed, in my opinion, needed a good bit. I don't think that the foundation repair was ever even considered in the price. So they came out at 105 a square foot. I'm not going to walk through every one of these by going through pictures, but this is where we really start to get in our range. Had the foundation crack been a major factor with the people who bought it, that would have had to sell for about 20,000 less. I do think they underpriced that. If it wasn't for the foundation crack, that one could have sold for 110. I know they underpriced it because of the demand that they had immediately right off the bat and cash offers, things like that. And this one again is very much right on line with us. This is 105 a square foot. Now the houses are getting smaller, which means they should sell for a little bit more per square foot. But appraisers don't like to make big adjustments for inversion. Inversion is the idea that a smaller house should sell for more. But the reason I like this comparable as a good one for us is it doesn't have the basement, finally. And if I take the price per square foot of all those other ones that sold for 105, I then have to make an adjustment which would back out about 10 grand for that basement. In reality, that basement probably would cost about 20 grand to build, but it only adds about 10 grand of value. Now this one does have a garage, and it doesn't wow me. It's not a real large garage, but I think our house is above this in terms of condition. Don't think the garage is adding more than $5,000 to the house. So I'm going to go back to the list again because it doesn't do us well. Now that we have found where we are situated in the comps, it doesn't do us a lot of good to then go look and run down all the other comps in terms of saying they're not as great. But here we go. This one is Belding. Needed lots of work. I actually went on the listing appointment for that one. I gave them a very long list of things to do, and because they needed to walk away with a certain amount of money, and I had to get them to that. They ended up choosing like 6 months later to list with Terry DeSelms, and this listing lasted a very long time. I want to say it was about 6 months. It had a shared driveway, a lot of little problems there that would cause it to sell for 94 square foot. Again, we're better than them. Our house is better than that. And then again, you got one at 91 a square foot. So I think our best comparable sale is these two right here. Now, I like this one at 97 and 105. If I backed out 5,000 for the garage on this January one, it would basically bring us almost to 97 or $100 a square foot. Okay, so basically I'm situating you right in between about 105 and 100 a square foot. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take a different approach, which is called a value approach. We're imagining that we're buyers in the market, and we want to see what we can get for our money. So what I did is I said, we need a minimum of 3 bedrooms, 1 bath. We don't want to pay, we can pay upwards of 140, no more than 200. What is available in the 37214 market? And this is where I get really bullish on Donaldson, and I feel really strongly that we're going to get top value for your house for the condition that it's in. Okay, so if I go look and see what I can get, if I had $171,000, I could buy a 1,500 square foot house on Windermere Circle. So where we're going to come out is going to be priced a little bit below that. And then what I want to run over real quick is that these are just not comparable properties. Hibbett's, I don't know if you're familiar with that road. It was a road cut sometime in the 90s. Very inferior houses. Penmead, very inferior. And then Crump, Waterfalls Park, and Hickory Bend, which is, again, right near Percy Priest Lake area. So basically our only real competition for people who want a nice home in Donaldson is this 2932 Windermere property, which means we just have a great time to come on the market. In fact, I'm really discouraged when people are not putting their house on the market because they think Christmas time will affect it. This holiday season, it will affect it, but the lower the inventory, the higher price you can get, and we have a very low inventory. And again, this one on Windermere, Windermere's great. It's got a half-acre lot. It's great, but I think that there's more neighborhood demand in our neighborhood than there is over here. So second approach we're going to do is a neighborhood approach. Believe it or not, there are a value neighborhood approach. There's specific people who only want to be in Stafford Estates. And so what you see here is we have 2 options if you want to be in Stafford Estates. This 200 Eldon, which I have a contract on, completely not comparable. That one is 7 acres on the river. And then this Danny Crest one, which is just in left field somewhere again. It's a very large house. It's only $72 a square foot, but it's just it's not competing with us at that price range. The people who are looking at our house are not going to be looking at $250,000 house. So when I take all that into consideration, and then I'm going to look at one more thing. I'm going to look at the appraisal approach. So if an appraiser comes in, what is he going to see? Well, what I had to do differently is I have to get rid of the neighborhood name. Appraisers don't have to pull from the neighborhood. They prefer to pull 2 from the neighborhood and 1 outside from the neighborhood. But I can't go a year back. I can only go 6 months back. So what you see is an appraiser, he doesn't have, he can't make adjustments for, say, demand. A lot of people want to move in Stafford Estates, or ugly carpet versus cute carpet, or a pink house versus a purple house. There's no matrix for that. So we have to look at it in the cold way that a banker will. And what we see is we've got 126 a square foot in Sutherland Heights, 103 a square foot on Medina. That's Maple Crest subdivision. I used to live there. And you got 113, 115, 121 in Mary Oaks. Now these are superior houses, but then we go to 105, 112, 99, 105, 93, 96, 94. Okay, so what that tells me is that an appraiser can pick, he's going to pick about 6 houses, and he's going to do comparables on 3 houses. The other 3 houses are just to show the underwriters that he's not in left field somewhere and that he didn't just cherry pick them. But what the appraiser is going to do is we have to have the numbers if we want to push the market. If we don't have the numbers to back up the sale, and assuming the person's going to bring a loan, they always are, or 99 times out of 100 they're going to bring a loan, we can't just sell the house for what someone's willing to pay. We have to sell it for what someone's willing to pay and what a bank is willing to finance it for. So what this tells me is I can push the market. I have the numbers if an appraiser goes in our favor to make the house sell for more than any other house is sold for the condition that this house is in. Okay, so here's the breakdown. The reality of it is that your house is worth $100 to $105 a square foot. It could be arguable, it could be worth a little less or a little more, but that good of a sales record for this year, I think it falls pretty squarely at that 100 to 105 a square foot, depending on how you adjust for the basement. If I multiply that by the actual size of the house, you're looking at 145 to 152 a square foot. Now that's where I want to spend our energy and our focus, is keeping in mind that that's the reality of things. We can't add a lot of value right now because doing the repairs or upgrading or anything like that is not going to bring us enough money. So there's not a good ROI on a long punch list of items that you need to do. So if we go into fantasy land, we say, well, you know, people all the time are telling me, well, I believe it's worth this, you know, but it's not based in reality. So I do want to spend a little time there, and that's the fact that inventory is so sparse, supply is so low, and the demand is so high, we could possibly sell for more than the house should really be worth. I would say that would be 110 to 115 a square foot. The 115 would be really hard to catch without the basement because we just don't have that comparable there. But because when we looked outside our neighborhood, we did find it a couple times, then it is possible that if we cherry pick the appraiser cherry picked the right comparables, we could sell for as much. But even realistically, those comparables outside the neighborhood would be brought down by the 2 comparables that will need to be chosen from within Stafford Estates, if they're available, and they are. So, you know, we could possibly sell for more. Now, my marketing price is very different from my projected sales price. You guys know that I love Donaldson. I live here. I want to see the market go up. I don't make it my goal to sell in 15 days, 20 days. A lot of times we do. Sometimes we sell in 22 hours. My goal is to make the most money possible for my clients, and that's where my interest lies. So if I ground you in reality, in appraisals, comparisons, comparables and buyer aversions, how they affect the sale, then I want to price for as much as possible. What that is, to me, is $159,000. Now that pushes us about $7,000 over our reality, but then we leave room to negotiate. We're probably going to negotiate down, and we don't know what was done in terms of concessions given on those other contracts that I talked about. Some of those may have covered closing costs, some of those may have had to do some extensive repairs, and so 159 is a good start. Where do I think it's going to sell for? In my heart, I think it's going to sell for 147. So you'd be selling for more than the people across the street without a basement. Let me know what you think about that, guys. Let's talk. Thanks.